Thank you for checking out crypto.chartguys.com, the source for technical analysis in the cryptocurrency world. We are proud to announce our own crypto alert system designed to give you the most critical technical trading information possible no matter where you are. Keep your eyes on the market with mobile or email alerts for MACD crosses, RSI levels, and even inside bar alerts for dozens of coins across multiple exchanges. New features and proprietary ChartGuys indicators are already in development. Our alert system is very easy to customize and utilize, so don't hesitate to sign up for the most effective crypto trading tool on the market at crypto.chartguys.com. Hello everyone, checking in on Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash, BCH. We're looking at continuation overnight heading into today. Great for the bulls, nice follow through. I currently have scaled out half of my BTC position in the 8,500s, and I'm going to let the other half ride as long as we maintain hourly exponential supports and continue the uptrend. And I'll go into those in a little bit more detail. But a couple things that I want to talk about today. The first being the downtrend on the daily time frame on the log view. Remember that zooming out here, log changes the view here. So if I have log on or off, it's a different look. But people are talking about the downtrend line on the log view. And I posted on Twitter that this line doesn't really mean anything to me. And it's all about the weekly equilibrium. And I'll go to that in just a second. But here's the reason why this downtrend line doesn't mean much to me. Number one, we're still going to be seeing weekly lower highs even if the downtrend resistance breaks. So that is what matters to me, the price levels. But let's draw this trend line right now. I'm using the anchor point as the highest close on the daily time frame that we have seen. And then I'm drawing my line down, and I use the next anchor point, which is right here, the second peak. That's that lower high. That's the anchor point that I want to make sure gets touched here on this line, but there are no closes above it. Now, while I'm doing this, you know, I'm using my vision here to match this candlestick and make sure it doesn't close above it. Watch these two peaks down here that you guys are going to be looking at while I'm doing this. So I'm looking at that first peak, and I could either put the line right here, which means the line's not in play right now. Some people on Twitter, they're putting the line right here with us breaking just above the line because they find this, you know, third peak down more important to be hit. But in my opinion, that's, you know, there's too much. The bottom line is there's too much of a significant difference on a fraction of moving this line as to whether we're, you know, $300 above this downtrend line or whether we're $300 away from this downtrend line, depending on what emphasis and which peak you're putting more emphasis on. So why I say that trend lines, you know, I pay attention to them and I visually can see them without even drawing them. But in terms of trading based off of them, if you take 10 different analysts and you put them in their own rooms, they're going to give you a different trend line at a different price point. And it's not going to be consistent. Whereas price levels, what I'm looking at on the weekly time frame, this equilibrium that is just a gift for us, that's going to be a gift in June when I am anticipating a potential break. But that's just a very rough estimation. This is what matters to me. This is price levels. There is no opinion in here. It's all very clear. Our last bounce attempt on the weekly time frame topped out at 11,775. No one can dispute that. All traders are looking at that level. I am looking for a lower high to be set. Again, 2 weeks ago, or when this breakout started on that daily chart, I said the upper 8,000s, perhaps around 9,000, is where we're going to be looking for the weekly lower high to be set. Then we're going to be looking to pull back and form another higher low, perhaps in the mid $7,000 range. And then we're going to be looking for a break of this equilibrium pattern. We're either going to lose the weekly higher lows or we're going to break the weekly lower highs. It is so very clear that I'm just patiently waiting for this and really looking forward to it. Ethereum had a weekly equilibrium pattern long ago last year that played out beautifully and saw a huge follow through. So I just love the clarity of these patterns. I love the spike in volatility that always comes with them. And that is what I am focused on. So even if we break this daily downtrend bullish, it's not going to mean anything to me personally in terms of my analysis. It's just my style. It's not right or wrong. It's what works for me. And other people, trend lines work for them. So that's fine. So here's our daily higher low in a very ugly color. I don't know where that came from. So we have our higher low on the daily time frame. We broke 8,400 to our higher high. Bitcoin was the laggard. We saw Ethereum and Litecoin both break bullish yesterday. Was holding on to my Bitcoin position, wishing I was in the other names, but I have been bouncing around and unable to trade as much as clearly and focused as I would like. That's another thing. If you are, you know, if things are going on in life that are going to make trading harder, the odds are stacked enough against us as it is. So anything that we are doing that is making it more difficult, those are scenarios where we need to either scale back or stop trading. So, you know, my instance is I'm moving around, but it could be an instance where maybe your kid's homesick from school or whatever it is. If it's distracting you and it's decreasing your ability, then it's important to know when to shut it off. So I have not been jumping around to different positions because I'm just going to let it ride, and so far it's playing out. So what had me exit in the 8,500s and start to scale out? Well, the reason was I was looking for, my target was a break of 8,400, and I assumed we would see a $100 move to the upside at least on that follow through. So I just wanted to lock some in. I had a full position at that point. I am anticipating that this daily chart is getting a bit extended. We can still keep going, which is why I'm keeping half of my position. But my trading style has me, rather than setting a stop level and getting triggered on a stop loss for my entire position, which would give a lot of slippage by the time it all filled, I am scaling out for free with free orders, with my limit orders. And again, just being cautious, taking the profit when I have it. If I were all out of this trade right now, it would be a very successful trade from an entry perhaps a day and a half ago. So I am perfectly fine not being greedy and just scaling out a portion. We're currently forming a 4-hour inside bar, but there's a lot of time left. Just another hourly higher low. And let's see if we can see bullish continuation. Wouldn't be surprised to see a little equilibrium on the hourly as things settle down this afternoon, but our new support is 8,452 and our resistance is 8,543 at this point. If we see another leg to the upside, I'll scale out another little bit of my position, and that's just a style that I'm going to continue. And then once I get down to maybe a third of my position, that's when I'll put that and just walk it up with every higher low with the stop loss, because a stop loss on a third of my position, not really too bad in terms of slippage and fees and all that. So bulls in control. I'm watching these exponential moving averages, which have been holding ever since my entry back here. And there's a couple things I want to talk about. People sitting on the sidelines on this daily chart and saying, oh man, it keeps going up third day in a row and I've got no position, and do I buy now? So those of you that are not, giving into FOMO, that's good for you. That's a good, strategy and a good way to go about trading. But you have to be patient to wait for the pullback to come. And it can be difficult. One thing that I want to talk about is re-entering positions, because a lot of people are talking about, taking profit too early and it keeps going, and knowing when to re-enter. And we'll talk about that as well. But in terms of if you are not in a position right now, I do not like bullish entries at this level unless you're scalping, and scalping is just quick flips. So let's say we break 8,543. If we enter on a bull break with some solid volume and you were to enter on that bull break, I personally would only be holding for, $40 and selling it under 8,600. Every leg up that we see, the risk to reward ratio begins to decrease in favor of the bears. So it was favoring the bulls a lot on this way up, but the 4-hour RSI above 70 is another reason that I would not be looking for anything more than quick flips on these entries, and just being cautious. Again, at this point, this is not the trade coming to me. If that's me going to the trade, if I'm trying to enter bullish up at these levels. So for those of you wondering, when can I get in? Let's go back over the past few days. So we had the bearish head and shoulders pattern that did break the neckline, but did not get any follow through from that. But I had exited my position, and I want to talk about how I re-entered and how I went about managing it. So on the initial bull move here, I was looking for a break of 8,220, and it was the same kind of scenario. And once we got that break, I began scaling out my position, and I sold in the 8,300s. I sold half of my position, and then I put my stop loss below our low of that consolidation, which was trying to form the hourly higher lows, and that broke at 8,250. So the last of my order exited in the lower 8,200s, 8,240s. And at that point, my average of exiting was probably just about right around 8,300. So now I'm back to all cash. I'm saying we're consolidating. There's our lower high, lower low. Perfect. Looking good. We're pulling back. I'm all cash, locked in my profit, and now I'm waiting for a re-entry point. But the bulls very quickly put a stop to that. And so I said, okay, well, that's very encouraging for the bulls, because if they are able to follow through with this bounce and hold from a bear break, that's going to give us the bull flag on the daily time frame scenario that would be ideal for the bulls. So I was watching the 4-hour lower high, and then we had a double top, and I said to myself, okay, very clearly now, if we break this 4-hour lower high pattern, our daily consolidation is going to be very limited. It's going to be a significant recovery by the bulls. I'm going to want to re-enter on that position. So I triggered in on a stop buy on a break of that double top, and my average with fees included was probably about 8,200. So I entered, very little difference between where I exited. I was able to get maybe a little bit more Bitcoin, but not significant. The bottom line is I took risk off the table. I protected my trade. I got back to all cash. And then once I saw the coast was clear for the bulls to keep going again, I got back in, and then I just traded the hourly. I shouldn't say traded. I just stayed in as long as, and here was me getting triggered on the bull entry. And I said, all right, as long as the hourly exponential moving average holds, I'm going to keep riding this up. And it's gone really well up to this point. There was a little bit of a shaky point right here yesterday, but obviously followed through very nicely. So that's where I stand right now. And again, if you are on the sidelines, bullish entries do not have a great probability up here. And I personally would be scouting for bearish entries, but I would need to see a loss of the hourly higher low pattern as signal number one before I were interested in any kind of bearish entry. So that's where we stand. We are going to be looking for healthy consolidation on the daily. I am still looking for potential continuation in the sense that, my target's been for the last week that 8,000, upper 8,000 level. If the bulls are going to be looking the best on the weekly time frame in this equilibrium, we could see another 4 or 5% on this move with continuation. Ethereum has just been a stud. Higher low established on the daily time frame. Beautiful continuation. And a lot of people are asking, with RSI levels so high, how are we continuing to run here? And it all goes down to correlation, and correlation is due to arbitrage and bots and algos and all that computerized aspects of trading. So when you have a bull break occurring on a name that's a lot more oversold and a head start. So we already started bullish, and we can see the correlation is still there. We're still trading very similar to Bitcoin, but when we pull back, we don't pull back as far. And when we break out harder. That keeps, the bulls a couple steps ahead of the Bitcoin bulls. So at this point, there's definitely some retail trading that is FOMOing into this trade in a bad position because the RSI is too overbought. And as I said, risk to reward does not favor bullish entries up at these levels. And there's also, again, a lot of bots that are doing this buying. So people are saying, who's still pushing ETH up at this point after it's run so hard? The answer is people who don't know anything about technical analysis, and they want to buy the name that has the biggest amount of green in terms of percentage next to it. And the other answer is those algos and bots. And we're going to be watching for Bitcoin weakness. I wouldn't be looking short on Ethereum Litecoin or BCH until we see Bitcoin weakness. And like I said, until we lose at least the hourly higher low pattern. So ETH on the daily time frame broke another key resistance here. The next resistance on the daily was this lower high. That was really the last major bounce attempt, and we topped out at 590 rounding. And we did break that level, not convincingly, but we broke it by $5. A break of 1,600 would be a lot, or 600 would be a lot more convincing. But this is a very solid bounce. The weekly time frame is giving us a nice move, and it's a nice enough move that when we do consolidate, we will anticipate a higher low to form. So what's going to happen if we get bull breaks on the Bitcoin equilibrium weekly time frame? We're going to see it go from higher lows and lower highs to breaking the lower highs. And in the same correlation, we would be looking for Ethereum to have set a higher low and then break its lower high as well. It's just a different setup with less support, but the bulls obviously coming roaring back from their bounce and very significant recovery up to this point. 4-hour time frame, like I said, too overbought for me to have any interest here. Even if we form an inside bar and it bull breaks at this point, like I said, unless I'm looking for a $5 flip on Ethereum just to lock in some taco money, then otherwise I'm just going to be patiently waiting for more prolonged consolidation. And even if it goes up, even if Ethereum goes up another $15 from here, once it does consolidate and once we do pull back, we'll be back at these levels or lower on that consolidation. I don't have any doubt about that. So it's definitely just a practice of patience that is ideal. So let's look at the ETH hourly higher low that was just established. The bulls remaining their strongest would be holding 580.10. Traders that want to keep their profits protected the tightest are going to exit if that hourly higher low is lost. We haven't really lost an hourly higher low in a long time on this move, which is another reason that I personally would exit on the higher low being lost on Bitcoin. So you can see higher lows for the last significant amount of time. At this point, it's a couple days. And resistance is the high of this move of 595.50 and then 600 psychological. Checking in on Litecoin. Lack of resistance. Remember, we were highlighting the lack of resistance. If we could get over the low 130s and 140s, there was really the no resistance zone was 140 through 150s. And we're still in that area. It's because we had an all-out dump with no real resistance established on the way down. Current resistance is the top of the bull move, 152.44. Then I would be looking at the next resistance level of 161, but some psychological levels in between. Checking in on the 4-hour time frame. Again, bearish reversal candlestick forming an inside bar, not being confirmed. There's a support here at 143.39. That's definitely an important support level. The hourly chart, the tightest support to be watching would be 148.62. So depending on how much space you want to give this trade and how much you want to protect your profits, you're determining whether you're using the 4-hour higher lows or the hourly higher lows. And because of my style and knowing that I just want to keep locking in these kind of gains, Never going to go broke consistently doing that. I am using the shorter term, meaning the hourly higher low pattern breaking as my entry point. One thing I wanted to point out that I'm just remembering right now, and then we'll get to Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin on the 15-minute time frame, we could see very clearly when accumulation was starting. Now, how do we know that? How can we see accumulation on a chart? So let's look at the preceding action here. Look at the candlesticks, and we were talking about the 5-minute time frame and all these wicks, big upper wicks, lower wicks, all over the place, right? Then look at this stretch right here. And I was watching this happen, and I was watching the bid support, and this was right after I put out the video yesterday, and in the video I was talking smack about Bitcoin, and I said, there's no bid support catching up here. So we see a bull move, and then as soon as the bear bots start to show big orders, we see the bull bots pull their buy orders, and then it's very easy for the price to dump right back down again. So there's no follow through on these moves. Then, of course, shortly after that video, the bots must have heard me, where we have, look at these candlesticks, and how can you tell it's accumulation and strong and steady? Number one, increasing bull volume. Number two, they're green Marabozus, which means the open is the low of the candle and the close is the high. Look at all these wicks. Look at the price action. We didn't have anything this consistent in the past couple of days. And now we're seeing this stretch of an hour and a half, 2 hours of just solid bull step by step walking the price up. And then, of course, we have our breakout shortly after. This absolutely stood out to me. I posted it in the chat room and said, visually look at the shift and how this is changing. And you could see it if you were watching the order book as well, just how the bids did not wipe out. And as soon as we lost a rung on the ladder, imagine it climbing a ladder where, 5 steps forward and then 1 step down. But normally back here, we had the rungs of support drop all the way down and you slide down that ladder. And on this instance, it's, if you lose the top rung of support, the bottom rung sees a good amount of bid support to back it up and to hold the price up. So that's definitely something to visually keep an eye out for. Just a shift. It's just a change. Normally, you give me any other chart and you point this out, I'd say, yeah, it's a nice run, but it doesn't stand out. It's only the preceding action and all these wicks that make that stand out that much more clear. So BCH, huge volume, huge breakout. Congrats to the bulls that were patient on BCH. More thinly traded, and the bulls are certainly experiencing big-time gains. At this point, we've bounced from 600, and we're almost going 90% at this point. So daily time frame resistance, we've cleared a couple levels here. Got over that resistance. Next level I'm looking at is 1158, 1158. 4-hour time frame, last higher low established all the way down at 941. So you have to ask yourself, do I want to potentially leave 15% on the table if I'm going to wait and stop myself out on the 4-hour higher lows? Now, obviously, we're not likely to just drop right down and break that level. We're still likely, if we consolidate, to form another 4-hour higher low. But that's another reason why I'll go to shorter term time frames, because of the lack of support immediately after it. So here on the hourly, the higher low is at 1054. So that's saving a whole 10% than if I were going to use that 4-hour time frame. So again, it's just all about personal preference. How much do you want to let it run? Are you fine in not experiencing FOMO if you take your profit and it keeps going? All of those questions to be answered. And that's where we stand on the big four. Bulls absolutely still in control. Loss of the hourly higher low pattern will be signal number one that the bulls are losing their momentum. And loss of the 4-hour higher low pattern will let us know that daily consolidation is likely coming. But where we stand right now, we are still following through on the daily bull break. We are still looking for progress into the weekly equilibrium. Another few $100s on Bitcoin, another $10 or so on Litecoin would make those weekly equilibriums be looking really nice. And we'll see if we can hold this overnight. Personally, I would be very surprised if we do not lose these higher low patterns on these shorter term time frames into tonight. So we'll see how it plays out. I appreciate you all watching. I hope you continue to do good things this wonderful weekend. And had a brainstorming session with a buddy last night. And one of our ideas is going to be looking for a do good things movement. So stay tuned for that. And think it could be a really cool idea. Going to develop it a little bit more and sit on it and get in a hot tub or a bathtub and let it resonate for a while. But I'll certainly report back once we work that out a little bit more. And I think it's a good way for a community to engage and help other people. And it's going to be cool. So thanks again. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.